Good morning, my artsy friends. My name is Ken Johnson, your thrifty apprentice. Welcome to our regularly scheduled Monday morning live. I hope you all are doing well, and we are, of course, still deep in the heart of World Watercolor Month. Now, if you are a part of the watercolor world, you have been hearing about this over and over and over since July started. It has been ingrained into the system, into the algorithm, into the blogs, into the videos. So, at this point, hopefully everybody is pretty familiar with what World Watercolor Month is. In a nutshell, if you're not, it is a month-long challenge that gives you 31 days. Each day has a word or a prompt that is put in place to inspire you to paint, the main medium being watercolor, but there is no rule that says you have to use watercolor. You can use other water soluble products. I've even seen some people using acrylic because it is water based. I've seen some people using water mixable oils because they're water soluble. So there are so many different ways to tackle it, including not adhering to the suggested word at all and doing your own thing. It's just meant to really get you painting and practicing. So that's what we've been concentrating on throughout the month of July. Now, I've tried to present you guys with a lot of different aspects and ideas, a lot of different ways you could look at this month long challenge that would hopefully help to alleviate any type of stress or any type of pressure you may have been under, or that a lot of people may get behind being faced with 31 days of consecutive painting. And on the one hand, it could be pretty daunting. On the other hand, it could be pretty liberating. It's really what you take from the experience and what you do with the experience. You can do all 31 days or just one day, whatever you choose, or no days, and just follow along with everyone else enjoying taking in whatever techniques they may be throwing out about how they're tackling their prompts, whatever instructional lessons they may be doing. There are artists who, of course, are taking it in a completely different direction and doing technique teaching, like Emma Fave, or those people who are giving you inspirational World Watercolor Month. We started off with the very first live talking about how you can use art block relievers, for instance, like the art dice or the color cube system, to give you inspiration from a prompt to allow you to create. We've talked about using the days as an opportunity to catch up on videos or written instructionals or blogs or instructions from a magazine that you may have run across that you wanted to give a try, because it's a great time to take on the class that you've been wanting to take on. It's going to keep you painting throughout the month. We've talked about approaching it from the literal standpoint, like last live when we painted the melting popsicle. The prompt was milk, and we literally did milk, you know. We've talked about last night, we tackled it from the imagination standpoint, where we took a word and just imagined the word in our head and then translated it to paper. It was a lot of fun, in all honesty. Did my landscape turn out similar to some of the other ones I've done? Sure, maybe, but it was an imaginary landscape. So maybe in my imagination, they all kind of look similar. With that being said, it was a lot of fun just to kind of take the word and just do your own thing with it, not to feel any pressure, but just use your imagination. So the idea for today's live is to completely ignore the word. Like, what do you mean a prompt? You're just going to paint. You're just going to create whatever you want to do. So I took that and ran with the idea that I told you guys at the beginning of World Watercolor Month, I was going to be concentrating on certain things that I wanted to kind of do in a series to help me practice and become better. Um, those two things were tackling birds and tackling different types of wood, be it trees, be it tables, be it, I don't know, round wood, whatever, just wood. Um, and I've kind of adhered to that throughout World Watercolor Month. So I was thinking to myself, instead of following the prompt for today, I would just paint another bird. Okay. So before all of this started, I made a list of birds that I wanted to paint throughout World Watercolor Month. And we've gotten through a few of them. We've gotten through the flamingo, we've done the chickadee, uh, we've done another. Hold on, where's my list? Wait. We've done the flamingo, we've done the chickadee, we've done the kingfisher. So the next bird that was on my list to do, we've done the woodpecker. We have, thank you, Mary Ann. Um, Now, before World Watercolor Month started, I've done an eagle and a very up close, just neck part of the swan. So I was going to put the swan back on my list to do because I kind of want to do a full body swan. Um, a robin has been done. So anyway, the full body swan. This is the point I'm getting to. This full body swan was the next thing on the list. Today's prompt is stretch, if I'm not mistaken. The idea was to get completely away from today's prompt, but lo and behold, the irony of the universe would have it that since I decided to do a full body swan, I was still kind of tackling the word stretch because they do have an extended, stretched, long neck and compared to other birds, compared to a lot of other birds. But what I want to encourage you to do, um, although I'm going to be doing a swan in today's creation illustration just to share something with you, what I want to encourage you to do is there are going to be days when you just don't feel the prompt, so don't paint it. Paint, hey, paint something that you've already painted. Maybe there was something that you painted in, I don't know, you feel next time around I paint this, it's probably going to be better. Go ahead and give that a try on one of the days that you're not so interested in the prompt. Absolutely. Um, Take any of the other suggestions that have been thrown out to you in World Watercolor Month. Go back and actually revisit videos that you've already done. Maybe there was something in that video that you missed. Maybe there's a technique that you liked and you've forgotten about. So maybe mess up and splash up a white piece of paper. Give it time to dry. Come back and then create on that paper from there. Just so many different things you can do. Let's talk about what we're doing today. So my idea for what I was creating today is going to be a swan. Um, I've already blocked it off and transferred it. I kind of wanted to do a full body swan. I found a couple of reference photos over on Unsplash of swans from different angles and different positions, and I finally settled on this one. This sort of you know. And it's going to be a little stylized. So maybe I need to zoom in a little bit for today. Let's see if we can get in a little bit closer. Okay, yeah. Let's see if we can zoom in. So you probably won't be able to see my paints. Let me see. Now I am illustrating inside the Etch a Sketch book that I have put most of my World Watercolor Month paintings in. I'm going to be using the Daniel Smith set I recently worked on curating and putting together. I was going to take those out and set them here so you'll be able to see the paints. I am going to be using a bigger mixing palette to the side here to do my mixing in. And since I've been using Daniel Smith for other World Watercolor Month paintings, that is what I already have on this palette. So to give me a chance to use up some of the actual dry paint on my palette as well. These bands are handy until they're not. Let me put that on the inside. There we go. And I need to grab a clip so we can keep our paper down. Okay, let me see if I'm straight on the screen. So this is the point where you're painting whatever you want to paint, right? That's what today's inspiration is about. It's about throwing caution to the wind, not worrying about what the word says, and just painting for the fun of painting, or for the fun of practice, or for the fun of learning, whichever experience you want to turn this into. Maybe you've gotten your educational resources and you have a watercolor book and you're following through the written steps right now in order to paint this thing, this illustration that you wanted to do. Or you're listening to me in the background and maybe you're following along to a watercolor video from another creator that you kind of wanted to tackle. Maybe you're following along to this particular video. You've taken time, and all the time I've used to chit chat and sketched you out a swan on a pond, because that's what we're going to be tackling. All right, I have a two water bucket system here, one for clean water, one for rinsing my brush. I'm going to start off with a pretty wet sky. This is a 3/4 flat Menta synthetic squirrel brush. These were the first synthetic squirrel brushes I purchased, and they are still going super strong despite all the other brands you see me use. And do we want granulation in this sky? We're going to kind of keep it pretty, let's keep the sky pretty smooth. So we're going to avoid ultramarine. We have a couple of blues here. I have a cobalt, so let's go with cobalt blue for our sky. And hopefully it won't have too much granulation in it. I'm not sure. Now this one was a paint stick. If you've been following me for a while, you probably know that I tend to like to buy Daniel Smith in the paint stick form, because I know I just feel like you're getting a pure pigment stick without the aluminum, without the screw on top, um, and you're paying the same price as you would with the tube. So for me, that this says, in my head, it just seems to make more sense about about a stick. I'm gonna wet my background, just the sky area. I still didn't go research whether this book was 100% cotton. I think I got confirmation that it was. I think Nicole told me it was. But I really like this sketchbook. I've been saying it every single time I paint in it, because I do. And at this point, maybe it's because I've done half a World Watercolor Month in it. So, 15 paintings on it. So maybe that has a lot to do with me liking it. Because there have been papers that I didn't like in the past, and I would continue to paint on them anyway, and then eventually one day I just all of a sudden like the paper, and it's thanks because you get used to the nuances of that one particular paper. I'm taking it down to the pond. Now we're going to try to keep our pond pretty still today. It'll have a few ripples around the swan, which is a little different for me. My water normally moves, so this will be interesting to see if I can pull this off. So even I'm tackling some new things today in this one. I'm gonna grab a little of that cobalt. We'll start across the top with the heaviest paint, and then we'll just bring it down. You can keep, if you're following along with me, you can keep your background as light as you want, your sky as light as you want. I have a paper towel for lifting out some little clouds in a moment. I would like a little bit more color in that. So I'm going to add it to the top of my paper, and then I'll blend down. That way it will naturally gradiate. getting lighter and lighter because more and more water is being added as we blend down into the wetness. But I think I like that. Keeping in mind it's going to shift. Okay. Love the fact that even like the flat brush will come to such a point when it's wet on the chisel side that I can get really close up on little detail lines. Love that. These brushes were actually pretty cool. I'm on grabbing a paper towel here. And let's see if we could just lift out a few clouds just real quick. Get one up here. Hope it doesn't stain too bad. Which it is definitely gonna do that. Alright, let's get another one on this side real quick. And I'm gonna lift out a few small ones. I'm not being really particular about this. I just wanna break up that blue. This is a number 8 round. I'm waiting. I'm gonna wipe some of the water off on a paper towel, grabbing a little of that cobalt, and let's go in here and just enrich the color around the cloud, just so they'll stand out a little more. Keep it watery. If you do this, keep it watery. Just want to kind of help those clouds stand out a little bit more because that lifting did not really do a great job. So here's a little trick to kind of help you if that ever happens. There, that should give us some kind of weird looking clouds in the background. Kind of roll some of the bottom of those in so it looks a little bit more natural. Because this can make it look a little cheesy. All right, hopefully that's a little bit better. And if you want to, you can go in and put in some storminess in your clouds. I don't want to, but you could definitely put some shadow under the bottom and kind of buff those clouds to give them a little bit more definition if you wanted to. But I'm going to leave the sky alone. That's enough for me as I add a little bit more blue to the very top. Just because I want that to be dark. Dry my brush off and because I don't want any blooms or blossoms. I'll make sure I even that water level out. All right, I'm going to leave that alone. Let's move on to doing the actual water itself. Now I will be utilizing ultramarine in the water. Not gonna worry too much about the background. We're not worrying too much about anything. Here is a flat. This is a number 6 synthetic squirrel flat. Starting off again with that cobalt. I switch over to flats whenever I'm doing water, land, anything of that nature, or anything in nature. Okay, here we go. We're painting around the, oh, I forgot. We want to keep this flat. I'm going to try to do this without touching right now. Anyway, I need two photos. Okay. Thinking ahead a little bit here. Let's get a photo of ultramarine going as well. Color is that? Ooh, that's phthalo, but it's gonna stain. For real, for real. Let's go with ultramarine. At least with using ultramarine, if we make a mistake, we can kind of lift back. We're going to be blending cobalt into it because we need color harmony. Let's wet, um, because I want this pretty flat like the sky was before we removed the clouds. Let's wet this background. Try to avoid your swan. If you're doing this, maybe you want to do masking fluid. I don't know. I'm just gonna try to be careful, mainly because I don't want to wait on masking fluid to dry, and it's not a good idea to use your heat tool on it. We're just gonna wait around the sun. Hopefully, the skyline has dried across the bottom enough. Now, this is hopefully going to be a gradiated flat wash. Let's see if we can make this happen. So I'm using my flat brush to wet my background. You want to make sure that there's a sheen everywhere, but not puddles. So if you have puddles, be sure to, even those out. Okay, that should be good. Now I'm going to switch over to that number 8 round I was using. And we'll start with ultramarine. Let's see if I can keep this on camera. All right. Um, I'm gonna try to do this flat without lifting my book, my sketchbook. So you want to bring that ultramarine down so far on both sides. Look at how beautiful the flow of these paints are. And I mean, you have to give the paper credit too. I'm gonna pick up my cobalt and transition directly into it. I'll finish up the entire thing with cobalt. Then we can go back and blend and mix the two. Should be ultramarine in here. And all I'm doing now is back and forth blending the ultramarine and the cobalt into each other. Some more cobalt in there. Now, this is the point where you could go ahead and lift out the reflection for your swan while your paint is still wet if you want a white reflection. But if you want a dark reflection, you don't have to worry about that. So this is the point where you would make that decision. And I did get into my swan a little bit too much. See if I can salvage that. He's so tiny, I should have done him bigger. Okay, but I think that's good. Put a little bit more darkness. Let's go with just a bit more ultramarine across the back. Just a really good separation between the sky and the water. Continuing to work wet into wet. Again, kind of different for me. Kind of different for me. Beautiful blend though. Trying to make sure to put down enough saturation. Let's go a little darker under the swan. I'm probably going to go with the darker end of the shadow just because that's just what I like. But you could definitely put that white reflection in, which would be beautiful and make a lot of sense. I guess I should let's see if I can put in some water off a brush here. Let's see if I can show you what I mean about lifting out this highlight. Let's see here. Now I am rounding, I'm making rounded strokes so I can sort of dome. Yeah, it stained right away. Okay, you'll get the point a little bit. And then I would remove where the neck is. See if I can get a little more of it to lift out so you can see what I mean. Okay, trying to use the paper towel to lift it out and dome it over. Okay, that's not too bad. Let's see if I can get a neck out here. Let's see if we can get a neck out. Uh, I think we can. I think we can do it. That's not too bad. That's not too bad. That's not too bad. I'm not gonna poo poo on it. That's not too bad. Let's fill this in a little more where we did some lifting where we didn't want to. And I'm dry brushing. This is dry brushing because I don't want the water on the brush to be wetter than the water on the paper. If so, that's what's going to create a back run and cause that cauliflower. So The paint that's on my brush is definitely drier than the paper. That way the paint will stay put, although we're doing a wet into wet wash. All right. I need to let that dry before we move on. Doing a swan itself is going to be pretty easy. Pretty easy. All right. So let's do some greenery here now. What greens do we have in this set? Let's take a look and see. We have phthalo green. We have a undersea green. Don't ask me why. And then we have a cascade green. So phthalo is going to be the cleanest, the most transparent of those. And phthalo is just beautiful. The phthalo colors, phthalo blue, phthalo green, they're all beautiful. Pretty staining colors, but they're all beautiful. Okay, so let's go with what was that phthalo green? The first green? All right, let's try a little phthalo here. I'm gonna mix that up here. Again, I'm using a pretty small headed brush. I'll start with some phthalo, and then we're gonna grab some. Let's see here. Hansa Yellow Light. That's probably gonna be the most lemon leaning yellow that I have. Yeah, so let's go with Hansa Yellow Light. I'm gonna mix that in just a little bit to that phthalo. And yes, yes, I'm dipping a green brush into my yellow paint. That's why I paint from dried down paints. You can always clean off the top of the paint. Let's add, that needs to be a little bit more earthy. Let's grab a little ultramarine and add to, oh, that's too much. I could feel that I had too much. That's a little better. It's not as fake looking. Okay. Let's see. We have, this is dry. I don't want it to bleed. I think this is dry. Okay, I have a little grass patch here, right in the middle of the water. Right in the middle of the water. Pull up a few grasses. Don't go crazy. Y'all know I can go crazy with grass. Now I'm going to grab a little bit more ultramarine and we're mixing only on this end. It's gonna spread so quick to get it a little darker. I'm gonna drop some of that in there as well. Pull up a few grasses, and then we will, since let's just use the dark one. Pull up a reed here. If you're using a round, be sure to stay on the tip of your brush because if you apply pressure, keep in mind with a round, if you apply pressure, you're going to get a thicker line because you're going to be exposing the belly of the brush. We'll have another one coming off view here. Just coming off the side of the page. Why not? You can do these green, you can do these red, you can do these whatever color you actually want to. I'm thinking I'm going to stick with yellow since I mixed yellow into that green. And it'll give me a chance to clean some of that green off of my. And we're going to go for more of a sort of milky consistency with this yellow here. You don't want it too thin. Yellows, tend to be a little bit more opaque than other watercolors, but it's not like we're using gouache. So now what I'm gonna do is sort of a cone down just a portion. Leave a little of the green sticking out the top. You can do this whatever color you would like. I'm just stippling from side to side, sort of forming a tree on top of it, if that makes any sense. Not sure if you can see that just yet. That's okay. We're going to add some shadow to it. Switching over and grabbing yellow ochre, mixing into just a little bit of that hint we were using. Go back. Oh, that's not quite wet enough. Still not quite dark enough. I'm gonna grab a little of this black. This is a neutral gray that I mixed last night that just has dried down. I'm mixing a little of that yellow mixture into it. I just need to get a little contrast in this. Everything is about value. You can't see the light part unless the dark part is there to help it stand out. And understanding that has actually made me a more fearless painter. Understanding that has made me not afraid to tackle things that I may have been afraid to tackle in the past, simply because I'm, coaching myself and explaining to myself, hey, this is not complicated. You just need to look for the value in what you're painting. Because the truth of the matter is, if you have your values right, you can paint something 12 colors shade wrong, nothing like whatever the reference is, and still have a recognizable composition. I'm putting a few leaves on these just so it'll look halfway decent. Making it look full, put a few leaves in it, and just go with it. You know, just have fun with it. I'm referring to, like I said, a couple different reference photos. Let's grab a little bit of the darker. I'm gonna mix that green directly into that yellow and that neutral tint we had here, and use that to add a little definition to. There we go. Nothing too serious. Most of it is dry brushed. I really do like this paper. I'm going to continue to say that. Let's do this again on the opposite side. Yeah. Out here, maybe? I don't know. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm going to try to make it perfect as I say that. So we're grabbing a little bit more phthalo. That's our base color we're working with. So I get a little bit more of that put in. pull up a few grasses. Going with that phthalo and ultramarine mixture to darken it just a bit. Drop it in along the very bottom. And again, pull up some grasses. It's giving it a little darkness. Taking that same mix in the very tip of my brush. I'm gonna jot down some stems here. It's okay if they're a little wonky, if they look like they bend, it is perfectly fine. It's all a part of her nature, right? Some of these turned over leaves in here. Maybe one sticking straight up there. Maybe this one covers this way and covers the front of the stem on those other two. Just use your imagination. I'm not even looking at the reference at this point. I will be referring back to the reference once I get to my swan, though. I'm just kind of having some fun adding in some leaves here. Whatever looks right, whatever feels right. You don't really even have to put as many on this side. I could actually turn this into just one with leaves. All right. You can get really carried away. Trust me. You can get carried away real easy. Okay, let me put a little flower, at least one yellow flower over here. Um, that's a yellow. All right, and let's make this one. At least put two over here so it halfway balances out. Yellow ochre, mixing into some of that Hansa, dropping it in. This never seems to be darking it right off. That's one of yellow ochre. There we go. Drop some of that in. And then mix it into the dark, the neutral tint. And that neutral, that dry neutral tint is ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and burnt umber. I tend to just make it up in large batches sometimes and let it dry down on my paper. On my palette, and I just reactivate and use it. So I always having to mix a neutral. Okay, again going with the what do we have? Phthalo. Let's move on to the swan is going to be the easiest part. It really is. That's why I'm saving it for last. We're actually almost done with this. Uh, let me see. I'm gonna grab a little and then I mix it here. Trying to get a nice dark, darker green. And let's throw some shadow on some of these so they don't look so unnatural. A few grasses. I'm gonna have a water line under that anyway. Same thing over here. And at that point, I was just grabbing mud off my palette because it's all been mixed from the same colors now. So it'll go. All right, time to hit our swan. I'll check the comment section right before we start on the swan because, like I said, we'll finish that up. We'll put a few shadows in the water and we'll call it a day. Real easy, real straightforward. So we are going for our little swan here, and I have a couple of reference photos. So let me pull up the one I definitely want to use with this. Let's see. Let me. No, that's not what I want. I want to split the view, and I need to put. There we go. That's what I need. All right. Maybe I should have put something along the horizon line back there in the back, but it's too late now, so we're not gonna worry about it. We'll keep it simple. We'll add some birds to the sky. You know I love some birds. We'll put some birds with the bird. Okay, let's get this crackle back. Everything else we're going to do is pretty much going to be worked out with our dark paint. And now, again, if you don't know, you can use black if you would like to use black. If that suits your fancy, you can use a pre-made black for this. If you want to, you could actually use Payne's Gray for this. Payne's Gray is a beautiful gray, cool leaning that will work really well for what we're about to do. If you want to mix your own neutral, you can. There are several different ways to mix a beautiful neutral. Any colors on the color wheel that are opposite each other will mix a beautiful neutral color. For instance, your red and your green, your blue and your orange, your yellow and your purple. These are colors that are directly across each other from each other on the color wheel. And because of that, they cancel out each other, so to speak, and will make a neutral dark color. We tend to refer to it as mud. When it's something we don't want, we refer to it as a neutral. It's something we do. So basically, you're making mud. Now, this mud or this neutral that I made is made up of ultramarine blue, which is a granulating color. It's made up of burnt sienna and burnt umber. Now, you can actually mix a different temperature neutral using just your ultramarine blue and your burnt sienna. The more burnt sienna in the mixture in that's in the mixture, the more warm leaning your neutral will be. The more ultramarine blue that's in the mixture, the more cool leaning your neutral will be. Now, in my case, I like to mix mine with a little burnt umber as well, because burnt umber in itself is a more cool leaning brown, which, in case you didn't know, browns are just desaturated versions of orange. Okay. So it's a more cool leaning brown, and it tends to make the mixture, the neutral mixture, cool right away versus me having to fight the ratio with a burnt sienna. So this is just a little information for in color mixing to throw it out there to help you understand that a neutral is mud, when to use the word neutral, when to use the word mud, and how you can make mud. There you go. So I'm going to start off with watering down some of this because I want to work with this in a really watery sense. I'm using a synthetic swirl brush simply because I know it's going to hold more water than a golden Teflon brush will. And I'm using a number 2 round because I want something small for detail that comes to a really nice point. All right, let's get this crack a So I'm going to be looking back and forth between my page and my reference photo. And let's see where we put our lightest highlight, our lightest shadow first. So we have some here under the neck where the neck curls over. And then there's some here on the front of the breast. Now I'm gonna immediately rinse, blot off the water, the excess water, and I'm gonna go in and blend. I don't want harsh lines, and I might dip the tip of my brush into a little water as I go, just to keep it wet enough to blend. Same thing on the shadow for the breastplate. Say breastplate. I know that's not the proper terminology. Bear with me. I'm sorry. I don't know the proper parts of to call the swan. Don't know. you know. All right. So I'm gonna grab some more of that darker shadow. Really watered down. We're still working with the really watery shadows here. Nothing too heavy, nothing too dark. So we want to come up the back. Now this is sort of where the neck is, uh, blocking the light from touching the back. So you want to be sure to keep it thin and only in that area where it would appear like I'm gonna curve that a little bit up the back of the neck. All right, now let's go in and blend that. And you'll notice as we're doing this, he's gonna start to take a lot of shape. The key to this is blending out the harsh lines. Because in nature, when we look at something white, it's not white at all. But we're gonna make it appear white with our shadows. All right, I'm grabbing a little bit of that Hansa yellow light that I use, right? And I'm gonna mix, I mean, just a smidge of it and some water here. I want it super light, super light. And I'm gonna put a little bit around the cheek and top of his head, uh, a little streak in his feather area, and then rinsing, pulling off the excess water and blending. Rinsing, pulling off the excess water and blending. No harsh lines, no harsh line. All right, let's keep moving with our shadow. Going back into my watery shadow here. And I want to sort of start coming across the bottom, but I'm pulling it up in flicks. Like I'm trying to emulate that might be feathers along the bottom of it. Starting to indicate the areas where I'm going to have more shadow. It probably would have been nice to do a super up close study of this. So you can really get a feel for it. But hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Rinsing, blotting brush, blending. There's going to be a lot of that. A lot of it. So just, and if he was bigger, you would definitely be doing a lot more of it. You don't want harsh lines on anything yet. Okay, he has a little strip again using the watery neutral. We'll go ahead and start basing in the front of his our guy here. So I'm gonna put his beak in, but that's gonna get painted orange. So we're gonna hold off on that. And we're gonna start with his face mask. We'll go ahead and base that in. It'll get much darker before all is said and done. Okay, and not blending out anything there. Just a little down the back of his neck, just ever so slightly. Nothing to blend, just a little shadow. We'll intensify it a little bit more on his back in just a sec. Let's get started on these wings. So this wing is going to have a major shadow under this line. And it's going to be feathers. Okay. So these are going to be feathers. Again, with our watery wash, we're putting in all of the darks at this point. Now here on his back, this is going to be more defined with shadow here. It shows the separation in his wing like that. And then let's just we'll go upwards, adding in the separation in his feathers. And I'm basically negative painting. That's literally what's going on here. I'm using a really watery gray to negative paint and push out the different shapes that I want his feathers to be. That's honestly how that is going. He's going to definitely be dark under the bottom, shadowing purposes, of course. Because although you might see the white reflection where he touches the water, it's going to be darker. Now, honestly, this is kind of enough. You know what I mean? Like you have the impression of a swan here. You can you could feel good in what you've accomplished at this point if you've been following along. But let's push it a little bit further, and we're gonna put in a beak, and we're gonna put in a few more darks before we wrap this on up. Let's see, we're an hour and a half in, so yeah, we're doing good. We are doing good. Almost a full composition here. So for the orange, I really want to mix it, but I have not used a red in this, nor have I used the orange. I've been using Hansa yellow, but I need a red to mix that yellow into. So I'm just going to use the orange. I'm going to use, what is this orange called? Ooh, it's Nougat Beige. So it's actually a more golden leaning yellow. Daniel Smith Nougat Beige just happens to have more of an orange hue to it. I'm going to feel a little bit better about that. So here's what I'll do. I'm going to take some of that Nougat Beige, and we don't need this to be watery at all. This is definitely your cream consistency paint, right? I'll take that gamboge and I'll mix a little of that Hansa yellow into it. I mean, just a touch of it. Just because I want to say we're keeping color harmony. So a little gamboge, a little Hansa yellow light, and then we'll paint his little beak area. It's a gorgeous color. Gorgeous color. We'll put a little detail on it in a moment. Let's give that time to dry, and then we'll come back and put on another coat on his beak and finish it on up. All right, let's move into adding darker. Now, what I mean darker, there are going to be some areas that are going to be much more dark than what we have put on up until this point. Here, this actually should be a little bit more shadowed in here. So what we're doing is we're mixing directly into our dark neutral with keep. This time, less water, more paint, super concentrated. We're going for that black. We're going for that black black. And we're going to start with one thin line under this shadow, really thin, really thin. Stay on the tip of your brush. That thin line is going to thicken just a little bit towards the top. Okay. And then each one of those individual feathers on the end is going to have a little darkness kind of helping to sketch in its shape. Just like that. And you can still see the actual original shadow we put down. Same thing for the next one. So here we're going to have right here a darker shadow than anywhere else. Let's see. It kind of curves like this on his back. And this paint is pretty thick. It's not water. It's pretty thick. I want it to hold its saturation. I'm using very little water here. Not quite dry brushing, but it's definitely not wet. Um, this area is definitely more intense. And it's got like little feathers sticking up out of it, like there. This area is interesting, so it goes that way and this way. There's lots of dark feathers, like so, and much shadow here, and then divides here, and makes another one here. And I'm just following along, trying to see if I can figure out where the darkest darks go. See that go away. Okay. That seems to be, it's a little darker here. Definitely darker here. How does this work? It goes up like this, and then it comes down the front, literally all the way down. Let's get this part dark black. Trying to be careful. It's not very, almost like I said earlier, I'm almost dry brushing, so I want the paint to float off the brush enough. There we go. I can get some crispness. Um, Squares off like so. Okay. And then we have my beak is a little funny. See if I can nudge it. It's a little, my beak is a little on the funny side. Let's see if we can nudge it into place. Probably not. I tried to make it a little better. I think it still looks like a swan. His beak, his beak is a little questionable. All right, I need a real thin, not even outline, because I'm not keeping a straight line here. All right, and then I need definitely more shadow here at the bend. All right, let's see. Am I good? I think I'm good. See, like I said, it wouldn't be, it's not going to take a lot to do what we were doing today. I definitely want much darker under where he's touching the water. Let's put some ripples in the water too. Have to make it look okay. And we still have our shadow there. Now let's blend out a little of that shadow under the bottom of him because you would still be able to see like a little bit of the grayness there. Although you can see the white. I'm hoping I'm making sense because you would have the darkest part, the darkest shadow where like his body is touching the water. And then from that darkest shadow, there would still be a little slight gray figured shadow to come out. And then as the light exposes even a little more, you'll be able to see the white part of the reflection. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, I'm doing some ripples in the water and then I'm good. You see something that you feel is too harsh, rinse your brush, blend it, your painting, not mine. You have to be happy with it. So if you see areas that we did that you feel are too harsh, blend them. I even see areas we did I feel are too harsh, so I'm blending. I don't like harsh lines if I can avoid them. Now you could take some bleed proof and show you a trick. That'll be fun. Take that same brush, water down a lot of that neutral. I mean, water it down a super lot. Let's say, yeah, water super lot. And then you can go in and paint your swan with that super, 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 super light gray. It's not going to cover up the yellow. It's actually going to blend into the yellow. And it's just going to help him stand out a little more, number one. And number two, what this does is it tints it so that if you decide you want to go in with like some bleed proof to add some super white feathery highlights, you can. There we go. And he still looks white. Ripples in the water. Let's go here. I'm grabbing ultramarine blue directly from my pan, still using the same small round that I used to do the detailing on my swan. To wrap this on up. Now the picture I'm looking at has like, oh, I didn't mean to get paint over there. Thank goodness I'm not painting on the back of any of these pages. I'm not painting on the back of any of them in case I decide to deconstruct this sketchbook and remove some of these paintings. Because there have been quite a few of them that I've enjoyed doing, and I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna do with them yet. Okay, something like that. Something like that. And then we'll grab some that darker shadow gray, sort of watered down, a little bit more tinting strength to it. You're gonna just kind of follow some of those up with that in between. It just makes the blue stand out more, believe it or not. And it helps it look a little more realistic. All right, couple birds in the sky, and these can just be V's. You don't have to like go crazy with these. They can just be V's. I'm gonna probably go a little crazy with mine because I don't follow my own advice. Put a couple birds up in the skizzy, you know. Chill, fella. I mean, you just make the impression of birds. You don't not actually drawing a real bird. Seriously, don't do that to yourself. Maybe some off in the distance here, doing this thing. One off in the distance here. And one, two, three, four. Five is the charm, right? Um, let's put him here, just below the cloud. That's not flowing. There we go. I need that to flow. Thank you. All right. There we have a couple of birdies in the sky. Let's add some highlight. I really want to add a little bit more definition to the horizon line, if truth be told. And I think I'm going to just ever so slightly. I'm using the gray that we've been using, and it may turn out to look like maybe a little fuzz back there. Maybe it's a little small, really thin mountain that didn't sprout up into nothing. Maybe it's just a landmass. You don't know. It's way back there behind the swan, but it is adding a little bit more definition to that horizon line and helping break all of that up. You can even throw a little mountain in back there if you want to. I'm not going to, but you can if you want to. And just help to add a little bit more definition to everything. All right. What else am I doing? I'm adding. Hey, Corinthians. Hey, Don. I'm doing well. How are you? You completed your World Watercolor Month. That's amazing. Mine is going well. It is going well, taking it day by day. We are having so much fun. What is today? This wraps up 14 paintings so far. This one is not as in depth or as elaborate as some of the other ones have been, but it has definitely been fun. And he's a cutie. He's a cutie. All right, let's add in some bleed proof, and we're going to be calling this one good. Still sticking with the same round brush. We want our bleed proof to be again a skim milk consistency. So not too much water, not too thick either. All right, let's see. We're not throwing in a sun or anything. We're just gonna pretend like we know where it is. Let's put some highlights on our grass blades where we would have it at. Even throw some highlighted grasses in there. Why not? All right. And put a few highlights in our little flower. Make it stand out. Make them stand out. Okay. Let's move over to the other side. A few highlights on some leaves here. These are just thin strokes on top of the leaf to bring it out. A few little dots in the flowers. Maybe hit a stem here or there. Pull up a few grasses because maybe they're got some highlight on them. Done. Okay. Now this is where it gets interesting. You can actually, because I mean, swans are pretty smooth, you know, so you can go in and put in a few strokes, like really short, choppy strokes on top. And this is the reason we painted it, we tinted it. You want your paint to flow. You definitely want your paint to flow off your brush, so it needs to be thin enough to flow. And I'm just going in and putting in some white linear lines. Nothing too dramatic. Following the shape of my swan. If I'm along the bottom, I follow the feather design along the bottom. I'm on the wing, I follow it up the wing. If I'm going down the back, I follow it down the back. Always following the direction that the feather should go. And it's very subtle, but I think it makes a difference in the overall scheme of things. Then I put a little highlight on his eye. There. That's cool. That works for me. That's a little indication of some texture on him so that you can. Oh, yeah, he's got feathers. Now we have an area right back here that I did not get with ultramarine. So let's see if we can fill that in. Just kind of dry brush some in ever so lightly till we get the color we want. Okay, that's better. All right, friends. There you have it. Here's a swan. In the overall scheme of things, he's not too bad. He's not too bad at putting in my normal black outline. Mm-mm. Messed that up. Oh well. It happens. It happens a lot, actually. Have to be careful, especially on cold press paper that has two to it, because that marker will screw out a line in a quick heart second. But I just think it looks really good against the white border to have this. All right, we're gonna sign this baby. Oh, I did kind of want to just real quick. I mean, so it look right, right? Man, it will be white. What are we doing? Putting every color down there but the color that would be, right? White. And you can still see its reflection through everything, which is the point. All right, now I'm happy with what I see for the most part. Pretty cool live. Hopefully you guys picked up on something, saw something you like. If you did, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, sprinkle a little love. Absolutely. Sharing is caring. If you want to, you can share the video. Maybe someone else would love to see this live. Keeping in mind that the original inspiration behind this was to paint whatever you want, to completely ignore the prompt for the challenge and just paint what you want. And it just so happens that I wanted to paint a bird, a swan, um, so that I can continue my bird practice. And it just so happens that the swan has a stretched neck. It was never done on purpose. And there you have it, my friends. There's our swan for today. I don't know. I kind of want some splatters. Yeah, I know you guys probably get tired of me and my splatters, but whatever. I don't care. It's my painting. It's my painting, and I do what I want to. Do what I want to. Do what I want to. You would splash too if it was your time. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna grab some bleed proof, and I'm just gonna put a few splashes, because maybe he's making a little splashy under the water with his little feety. You never know. Just a little splashy. Ooh, I like that. A little splashy. Just keep it right around the base of him. This is intentional splashing, not just splashing on the paper for, the heck of splashing. Oh, me either, bees. Me either. I love splatters. I splatter on everything. I splattered last night. Marianne said, no splatters. It's hilarious. Have you guys, I don't know how old some of you all are, but there was this movie called Willow back in the day. One of my favorite movies. I'm such a fantasy buff, right? I love anything mystical, magical power. Um, like Winifred says on Hocus Pocus, mystical, magical. Like anything that's mystical. What is that saying? I can't think of it now. But anyway, um, there was this movie back in the 80s, I want to say, maybe early 90s. It was called Willow. I think the guy who played, was it Ward David? No, it wasn't him. It was another guy. Ward David. That was the guy that played Leprechaun. Anywho, there was these little things on the movie called the brownies. And they were these little tough, dominating little things about this high. They always wanted to fight. They was always arguing over who is it. I am the leader. Doesn't I probably sound crazy? Most of you guys probably have no idea what I'm talking about. I am the leader. That's what I think about every time. Davis was in Willow. Okay, so it was Davis. Um, I loved that movie. And the little brownies used to always argue over who was the leader, and they had these real funny voices. I am the leader. And that's what I think about every time I splatter. I think, this is my painting. I am the leader. I am gonna splatter. I don't know. I'm weird. Whatever. So there you have it. There's my weird little story. Um, so, thank you so much for joining me, friends. Let's take a little closer look. Let's see if we can get that up closer. Let's take a little closer look at that. It was my pleasure having you all here today. Thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully, this has been some inspiration to you, and it's actually on camera. Yeah, I'm holding it up for a while. I know it seems a little crazy, but I'm trying to get it on the camera. I don't think I'm on the camera. Let's see. There we go. So, thank you so much for joining me, friends. It has been my pleasure. Hopefully, you painted along with me today, or you just decided to paint alone and do your own thing. Either way, this turned out to be what we tackled for stretch. And although I was trying to veer away from it, I ended up doing stretch anyway. If you are a part of the Patreon Creation Station community, do stay tuned for tonight's video. That link to access the video will be going up soon. And if you are going to be joining us next Sunday over on Palm Street, do continue to check Palm Street because that advertisement, so that you can go ahead and hit the notification bell on it, will be going up today as well. So stay tuned for both of those. Pre-recorded release coming up this Wednesday, still surrounding World Watercolor Month. And then, of course, we will have a product review video drop this upcoming Friday, where I will finally be getting around to reviewing the Karen Dosh 72 full range count of museum aquarelle watercolor pencils. I am super, super excited about that review. We've done a few paintings on the channel if you want to go search it and kind of look at it so you can kind of be caught up on where we are with those pencils before their review drops. The video description, if it does not already contain, will soon contain all of the relevant information that typically comes along with the channel. You can check out the Defiant Art website. The curated palettes from last Palm Street Live, what was left over is now available. Well, a lot of them are available over on Defiant Art. I'm still uploading some of those. And some of the artwork will be available as well in the next day or so. You can find links for all of the social sites. Do keep in mind, you can keep up with everything that I'm doing for World Watercolor Month over on Instagram if you're following the Thrifty Apprentice there. If not, I definitely suggest that you give us a follow because Instagram is typically where I run most of the giveaways and contests as well. Anything else? Paints, pencils, pastels, and markers. Thrifty Apprentice Sponsor Facebook group. You'll find a link for that either now or when the video description is finished. If you want to join a place with artists of all levels and a respect for all levels and for all mediums, do give that group a try. I would love to welcome you there. And yeah, that's it. Go out, have fun. Patreon, I see you tonight. And remember, as I tell you guys at the end of every single video, my friends, just keep creating.